Welcome to the Becoming Superhuman podcast, where we interview extraordinary people to bring you the skills and strategies to overcome the impossible. And now, here's your host, Jonathan Levy.
Before we get started, I want to ask you a question. Every single week, we bring you these episodes full of dozens of skills, habits, routines, and strategies to help you become more superhuman. Now, be honest. What percentage of those things are you actually able to implement in your life? Of course not. You need the accountability and community. And that's why in 2018, I launched the Becoming Superhuman Mastermind. Every month, as a community, we invite a world-renowned expert in to lead a one-month challenge. Past challenges have included environmental design with Benjamin Hardy, hacking your sleep with Nick Littlehales, who is Cristiano Ronaldo's own sleep coach, and meditation with Muse founder Ariel Garten. On top of that, we send out a care package with all the gear and goodies you need to complete that month's challenge. And best of all, as a member, you get exclusive discounts to all kinds of events, courses, supplements, and gear. And those discounts alone are worth more than your entire membership. Look, as a listener of this podcast, we know that you stand to benefit a great deal from being in the group, but also that you stand to contribute a lot. And that's why we're offering 50% off your first month. To join, visit superhuman.blog/mastermind today. Greetings, super friends, and welcome to this week's episode. You guys, today we are joined by Caspar Craven. He is a successful serial entrepreneur who has 30 years in building teams and making things happen as an entrepreneur. He started at age 14 working in startup businesses, struggling businesses, high growth businesses, and even large corporates. He's built teams on trophy winning around the world, running yachts. But that's actually not why we had him on the show today. In fact, we had him on the show today because Caspar and his wife and 3 kids have had one of the most incredible life experiences and adventures of anyone I've ever heard of. And that is, they sailed around the world for 2 straight years, living and working and homeschooling their kids on a boat. So I wanted to talk to Caspar not just about entrepreneurship and teams, but also about lifestyle design, about leading a family, about setting up your life and your finances and your goals so that you would have this incredible amount of freedom. But we went even further than that, and we talked about all the different incredible life lessons and experiences that he gained both personally and professionally, and his advice for you on how you can create the life of your dreams, even if that is completely off the beaten path. I always enjoy talking to Caspar, and this episode was no exception. So it's with great, great pleasure that I bring to you Mr. Caspar Craven. Caspar, hey, my friend. Welcome to the show. I'm really happy to have you here.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. I've been looking forward to this and very excited to chat.
Yes. I've been looking forward to this. And also, I'm hoping we finally get to meet up next time I'm in London. You know, 2 people who travel so much and make a business and practice of traveling. You know, it's hard to sync up and be in the same place at the same time. But I know we're going to make it happen.
I feel we are. Definitely.
So, Caspar, for those who haven't met you and heard your incredible story, I guess I should give them some background, which is we were connected, I believe, through Dove Gordon.
Mm-hmm. Correct, yes.
And the call was supposed to be a kind of, cool, how can we maybe work together? And I quickly turned the call into me badgering you with questions about your life because I think you have one of the most interesting life stories I've ever heard. So I want to give the audience the benefit of that and let you just go and tell some of your incredible story, because I would be remiss if I deprived them the pleasure of hearing it.
Okay. All right. What a frame up. So where do we start? So I guess the most interesting place to start is back in 2009, where I guess I had a reasonably normal life at that point. I'd worked in large corporates, came out of that to go and run my own businesses. And 2009 was running a small business, turning about $500,000. and back then with 2 kids. And my wife and I are sort of looking at each other saying, you know what, is this all there is? There has to be something that's more interesting to life than this, because it just felt kind of hard and not particularly fulfilling. So we decided to just turn things around and just create a story of the future that was much more exciting than the one we were living in at that point. And for us, that story involved going and getting on a sailboat for 2 years, going around the world with our kids, which was crazy for all sorts of reasons, that we didn't have the money. Nicola had only been on a boat twice. She'd been seasick both times. We didn't have a boat. So all sorts of good reasons. But that didn't stop us. And over 5 years, we transformed my business, ended up selling that for 7 figures from the middle of the Pacific, and created other successful businesses as well. So August 2014, got on a boat with our 3 kids. I had 3 by then, and went off, sailed around the world for 2 years, had the most extraordinary time, and coming back and now trying to positively disrupt as many other people as I can. In a nutshell, that's kind of the story, right? So
that is so cool. And I mean, I've heard this piece of the story before, but it still blows my mind, every different aspect. First, I have to ask a small practical question. How did you deal with the seasickness?
So we figured out the way through that was the moment that Nicola, my wife, started to feel seasick. She would take the strongest medication that she could, the strongest seasickness tablets, and then basically sleep for 24 hours. And she would come through it pretty quickly. Her body adjusted while she was asleep. So, everything in life, there's always a solution. Just got to figure it out, right? So that was the solution to that.
That's a pretty easy one. Now, obviously, you weren't at sea for 2 years. Tell me about some of the countries and travel experiences and cultures that you got to dabble in.
Oh, gosh, so many. On the back of the book, we worked it out. We stopped in 86 different places.
Wow.
Yeah, and some of the most magical were probably in the Pacific Ocean. So the French Polynesia, the Marquesa Islands. So the Marquesa Islands, fascinating. It's only about 4 or 5 years ago that the last reported cases of cannibalism were there. So you go to somewhere like that with a little bit of trepidation, right? So everywhere that we went was pretty friendly, and you really are just off the beaten track. And you're going to places that they might get 50 visitors a year go there, and you're going and meeting people, and you're swimming in crystal clear waters and swimming with sharks and turtles and stuff like that. And one of the magical things for us was going to all these local schools. So whichever country we go to, we try and find the schools and go and get our kids to go along for the day and just go and meet kids from other cultures and just get a different experience, because, we all end up living on our own bubble of our own worlds. So to, go and experience different things. And when you do that, you realize that we're all exactly the same. We all have exactly the same challenges and issues. They're just sometimes in a different language. And it's just great to experience that.
Phenomenal. And I imagine there was a lot of homeschooling going on this boat.
There was. So it's interesting. So the homeschooling, right? So before we left, we spent got ages talking to the teachers from the local schools and getting advice. And we had so many school books on the boat, but we found it was really hard to actually try and follow the English curriculum. So basically, we just boiled it down. Said, look, everyday kids, you've got to do some reading, you've got to do some writing, you've got to do some maths. And other than that, you just got to go and find the things which will really inspire you and interest you. Mm-hmm. And that kind of took them to all sorts of different places and just kind of fired their curiosity and their imaginations, which, I feel quite strongly about. How do we disrupt our education system?
You and me both.
Yeah, because I think, we've got a system that was designed for Victorian ages and it's just not fit for purpose now. So, igniting kids' curiosity, I think, is exactly where it's at. So,
how has reintegrating back into the school system? Have you reintegrated your kids back into the school system?
Yeah, so they're back in the school system now. Why? Because, to be frank, homeschooling is quite hard work. So we did that for 2 years. And while we're working on the next mission and the next set of goals, it's kind of it makes more sense for them to sort of be integrated. And also, they're a little bit older now as well. So being around other kids is pretty important too. So, they're back in conventional system now.
Totally. I'll never forget Dr. Lev, who is a mentor of mine in accelerated learning, said, never neglect the fact that one of the most important roles that schools play is their public funded daycare so that mom and dad can get productive work done and be productive members of society. And that's not a role that we can neglect. I mean, it really is hugely important for us as a productive society.
Totally. I mean, so it was half term here in the UK last week. And so we went to San Francisco and we spent the week out there with the kids. And, it's quite joyful sort of taking them back off to school this morning, and I can now get on with things again. So I love spending time with my kids, but equally I like getting on with things too. So
totally. Now, tell me about some of the lessons that you learned along this journey. I mean, what you probably learned so much about yourself, your kids, your wife, but also life. I know you wrote a whole book on this, which I've been dying to read, but tell me a bit about what you learned, Caspar.
Oh, so many things. What did I learn? I guess one of the most important things was probably starting in the relationship place with me and my wife, because I think what happens so often is we have our own stories, our own personal stories, which we've nurtured since, we're old enough to remember things. And in a relationship, I think you've got to create a shared story of the future, because where we were before is we were both continuing on our own trajectories. And I think if we carried on doing that, then we might have gone in different directions. But creating a shared story which unified us was super, super powerful. I think there's an awful lot of people could benefit from that approach, creating a shared story for a relationship. Mm-hmm. So that was definitely one thing. And by the way, that's exactly the same thing that works in a business as well. That, people always talk about vision and mission, and, the words get lost in corporate language. I'm a great believer in boiling things down so that a 5-year-old can understand it.
You are so right. You are so right. Cameron Herold wrote an amazing book, Vivid Vision, which he passed out to all of us at Genius Network. And it's about creating a 3-year vision in future language. It's exactly what you're talking about, Caspar. A 3-year vision, it's like, we are here, we're doing this, we feel this, we are passionate about this. And then he puts the last chapter of the book is like, by the way, this works in your family too. So my fiance and I have a 1 meter by half meter framed Vivid Vision in our living room, which is a 3-year picture, and it spells out everything we want for ourselves in the next 3 years.
I mean, that's exactly what we had in our kitchen back at home, right? We had a vision statement on the wall, and we had a big map of the world. And it's got to be really visual. And I love what you just said there. It's like it's visible, right? Because you've got to tell people about it. Because the moment you do that, then you make yourself accountable. And everyone says, well, how are you getting on with that plan? And it's like, right. And especially when you tell your kids too, because that is the ultimate accountability. So, when we didn't have the money and we said, we're going to go and create all this money. If we got to a point 4 years down the line and said, sorry, kids, we can't go and do this plan because we haven't been able to get the money together, it's like, you can't say that. You've got to go figure it out. So, it just gives you all the reasons you need.
So incredible. What are some other lessons? I cut you off there.
Yeah, so applying the story from personal to business, realizing that it's all about we, not me, and engaging a team to go and do stuff. So I got to a point in my business where before I learned this lesson, where I was driving stuff so hard, and everybody threatened to leave just because I was telling everybody what to do. And someone said, you've got to take the whole team with you. You can't just be your ideas. And that was kind of one of those light bulb moments that I had to let my ego leave the room and just sort of say, okay, how do we do this stuff together? Build on everybody's strengths, find out why everybody was there. And just really get the best out of everybody. Again, same thing for family on the boat as it was in the business. So, the story of where you go together, and then, building on each person's strengths, saying, why are you here? How are we going to go and do this stuff together? That was definitely another one. And I think probably another one that comes up is the whole thing about resilience and learning from when things go wrong, which of course they will. And, we developed this values-based framework. So talking about what was right rather than what was wrong, and building on the strengths of each person. And, that kind of created what I would call muscle for focusing on good stuff. And when things did go wrong, so we had power failure in the middle of the ocean, when our mast almost fell down, then we kind of had this blueprint for how do we deal with things, rather than sort of just reacting in the moment and blaming everybody for everything and getting upset and excited and all excited about stuff. It's like, okay, let's just be calm, let's just deal with this, because this stuff's going to happen. So,
I really appreciate you drawing the analogy between the family and the business, because I had that realization a couple of years ago as well, that these same skills of communication and respect and delegation, that they really are the same. And it kind of drives my fiance crazy when I kind of manage our relationship the way that I manage my employees. But it's so true, right? These same skills of like listening to people and getting buy-in and delegating outcomes and clearly communicating those outcomes. And it's so powerful when you apply it to a family.
It is. I think about it. It's just pretty straightforward, right? Because like we're all just people at the end of the day, and they say you've got a work life and a home life. That's that. When you've got one life, you're the same person, right? People are all the same. We have emotions, and we all do similar things. So yeah, and it's helpful if you can apply that in both places.
Right. And psychology is psychology, right? And as Joe Polish says,
exactly.
Marketing is just applied psychology. And the same is true of management. It's just applied psychology.
Exactly.
And Caspar, what was your business at the time that you sold?
So that business there, that was in data analytics. So we did data analytics as a managed service. So we had corporate customers, so IBM, Microsoft, Cisco, banks, law firms, people like that. So we would take data from inside these firms, analyze it, and basically help them take better decisions by being better informed.
So you got back and you'd sold this business. And you had this epiphany, which is and I love what you said, because I feel like startup entrepreneurs and techies have taken over the word disrupt, but I want folks like you and I to take it back. We're taking back disrupt, Caspar, because we're the real disruptors, telling people, hey, you don't have to sit and live your life in a cubicle. That's disruption, not a new photo editing app that allows you to put emojis over your eyes. That's not disrupting any paradigms. So tell me about that journey. I mean, this must have been, you're from a data analytics business, you're a technologist, you're an entrepreneur, you're a leader, to going, hey, I just want to touch people's lives.
So the journey to that, so we came back from the sailing. Well, actually, when we crossed back over the Atlantic, sailing from South Africa to Brazil, we were asking ourselves, where do we want to live? What do we want to go and do? Because the last business was a tech business. We said, well, why don't we go and sail to San Francisco, and we'll go and set up home over there near Silicon Valley. So that's what we did. So we sailed to San Francisco, and we were splitting our time. We'll still split our time between the UK and the US. Mm-hmm. And I started launching different businesses. So tech business, a food business, various different things, just following on from where I'd left off before. And about 6 months into that, I got asked to go and do to give keynote talk. And I went and stood on stage, and basically I just sort of shared stories for about 20 minutes, half an hour. And I walked off the stage, and the feedback that I got was just overwhelming, that just by sharing stories, I've been able to make a difference to other people's lives. And so that was the point. I thought, you know what? I'm just going to go all in on this, because this is the most meaningful thing that I've ever done. Yes, I could start other businesses and create other different things, but actually to make a difference to other people's lives, to get people to focus on what's truly important for them, because most of us, I think, most people live on the deferred life plan. I will do this stuff first, I'll create money, and then I will go and do family stuff, then I'll go and do things that are really important. And, that was the thing that got us into trouble before. So actually, we've done some things here which are different, and it's kind of unlocked everything in our world: relationship, money, family. And it was the key to doing all those things. So I thought, well, you know what? There's some really cool stuff here. So for the last 2.5 years, or 2 years since then, just been on a mission just to share these ideas and get people to think differently about how they approach life and what stories they create and how they live things together as a team. And it's the most fun ever. And you know what it's like, right? I mean, it's fun because it's having an impact on other people. So
where do we start?
So in terms of disrupting, I start with a story. And it's exactly what you just described with what you and your fiance, you said, have sort of done on the wall at home. You go and create that shared story. And that really is the starting point for everything, because you unify the energy at home. And then once you figure out what it is you've got to go and do, then you start to go and create that story and figure out, what you're going to do with your family, what wealth you need to create to serve that need. But it all stems from that first thing of creating that story.
That's so wonderful. And I just today, and I don't know which is going to come out first, this episode or that episode, but I just today recorded an episode with Shlomo Freund, who is talking about releasing your money anxiety and how to get a better relationship with money and start to feel abundance in your life, which I also believe is hugely important. And wouldn't you know, it starts with the same thing, which is coming up with your story and figuring out, oh, okay, when I talk about living a rich life, what I actually mean is this, 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 and this, and then actually putting the numbers to that and going, oh, it only takes that much money. Yes. Oh, I could do that. That's not even that big of a sum, because it's the unknown evil is always worse than the known evil.
Totally. I mean, so if you don't know what you want to do, we almost, I think, always have a tendency to overestimate what we need. Whereas when you actually boil it down, then it might well be less, it may be more, but it just gives you that certainty. We always talk about, living your life deliberately, specifically, and consciously, and, making those choices, because for most of us, we're just sort of swayed by the different influences around us, what other people are doing. And the process that we take people through is to sit down on your own and also with your partner or whoever's most important to you. And it's like, what are the things that are really important to us? And go really deep in on those questions. Because a lot of the time you get through your 30s, 40s, and you've forgotten all the stuff that's really important to you when you were younger, because it's been buried under bills, life, kids, work, whatever else. And it's just surfacing that stuff again, because it won't have gone away. It'll just be buried deep down. And once you start to surface that, so every time we've done this in workshops and retreats and stuff with people always come out, it's like, oh God, I've forgotten about that, or I never knew that about you, about their partner. So it's just uncovering the levels of depth, and that's where the juice, that's where the excitement is in life, right? Whatever's really important to you.
So phenomenal. Now, I know, Caspar, that there is someone in the audience, at least someone going, well, it's easy for Jonathan and Caspar. They're entrepreneurs. They set their own schedules. They, list the other reasons. They already have made money in their lives, or they're whatever. And I imagine you have some things to say to that person.
So look, when we had the idea to go and do this, the business that I had was losing money. And quite frankly, I would have earned more money stacking shelves at the local supermarket. We didn't have enough money to buy a rubber dinghy, let alone a sailboat. And, it's once you become super, super clear on that plan, then you get resourceful, because that's something that really matters. And I don't know what the answer will be for any specific person, but I know that if you've got enough reasons to go and make something happen and find a way, you will find that way. And so that's what it comes down to, right? I mean, so we didn't have the money, but we figured out a way to make it happen. So,
right. Now, I want to ask, what was your wife working at the time? I mean, you said you were still running your business and you grew it and sold it from the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Was your wife also working?
So when we had the idea, she was working as an HR manager for a small company. So she was employed. But over that 5-year period, we transformed not just the data analytics business, but we created 2 other companies as well. So one was in property and the other one was in online dating. So back in 2003, I'd started this tiny little online dating site. And I'd always lost money, and I'd never figured out how to really grow that. But as we were going back through our different assets and saying, okay, what are we going to do? We realized that there could be something with this dating site. So we just went and found people who are way smarter than we were, and just sort of with a lot of humility said, look, can you show us what you're doing? So somebody very kindly showed us a different way to approach it. And we got one dating site to make money. We were making about £2,000 a year profit. And then basically we figured the model out. And then we went from 1 site to 2 sites to 10 sites to 13 sites to 23 sites.
Wow.
To 500 sites. And basically we just went all in on that model because we found something that was working. So that's kind of what I mean about getting resourceful. You suddenly start to see things with different eyes, and you find the opportunities. So the 500 was basically making £2,000 a year. So we said, well, how do we make £1 million a year? Oh, well, we need 500 of those. So that was basically the logic that drove it.
And these were, I guess the secret was that each one was just a very niche website.
You've got it. Exactly that. Catholics dating, teachers dating, doctors dating in 7 different countries. So
smart. Very smart. And then I imagine you sold it to one of the very few conglomerates in the dating space.
Actually, we actually ran that for quite a long time, and actually that was what provided the income whilst we were going around. I mean, to use the tech word, that market has been disrupted now by the likes of Tinder and Bumble, so that market's definitely moved on. But that's for that need basically.
So cool. Now, a practical question: how do you run 500 websites from the middle of the Pacific Ocean?
So that's all about the team, right? So the best question I've ever asked myself in a business context is, how do we create a business that can run without us? Yes. Because with all the different ventures, I knew that we would be in the middle of the Pacific at some point and be out of communication, and an issue would arise with a customer or a staff member or something, or be a cash flow crisis, whatever it was. And I wouldn't be able to step in. So therefore, I was literally forced to answer that question. And I don't think many people ever get to that place of forcing them to ask that question. They say, well, if it gets too bad, then I will jump in and figure it out myself. Mm-hmm. But because of that option was not going to be open to me, we had to really get the team thing right. And the team had to believe that we weren't going to step in if the going got tough. So they would have to figure it out. They had to take full accountability, full responsibility. So with all the different ventures, that's exactly what we did. And I think that helped us to create the best, strongest teams. So we followed a values-based approach. We had the really clear mission, the really clear story we touched upon. All those different components were essential. But with all the ventures, just brilliant teams of people running them. So we just had emails once a week just saying, where things were and how things were getting on, but no input needed from us.
Fantastic. And that is the dream. And I just read on the plane ride back from Strategic Coach in London, Dan Sullivan's The Self-Managing Company. And I'm all about it. And my team knows I'm all about it. I'm not surprising any of them by saying my goal is to be useless in this business, besides coming on and showing my not so pretty face on the occasional YouTube video. Yep. I want to make myself as useless as possible.
It's funny, whenever I stepped out of my business to start with, and it would make more profit than when I wasn't there, my ego would take a dent on that initially. And then I realized, actually, that's quite a good thing. We want more of that, please.
100%. 100%. And, it's like, if you're the bottleneck in your business, like, get the hell out of the way.
Yeah, exactly. So Dan Kennedy always used to say to me, it's like, Caspar, get out of your own way. And, that's the right answer. So,
yeah, totally. So I want to pick your brain a little bit, because you are an avid traveler, and probably one of the most avid travelers I've ever had on the show. Favorite tips, tricks, strategies, and hacks to keep yourself performing at your best, whether at home or away?
So it's funny. So my wife and I, we have this whole series of rituals, which we literally have a schedule every week that we have to tick them off just to hold ourselves accountable to them. So what are some of the things? Cold showers every day, just to sort of the whole Wim Hof method thing, keeping yourself in it tuned up. Meditation every day, clearing your mind. Gratitude journal, making sure I always drink 3 or 4 liters of water a day, just sort of, staying hydrated. Exercise 5 times a week, stuff like that. Stuff that, lots of people have done before, but, fundamentally it works, right? So
totally.
I find that easier to do when I'm at home. So when we were on the boat last week in San Francisco, it was harder to do some of that stuff. So easier to do a routine at home, I find. But, the opportunities are everywhere. Whenever I go, take a pair of trainers and, just go and find the local street and turn left, turn right and go out and run. So.
Really great. And it is timeless advice. And I just recorded a video today where I basically said, like, hey, if you want to perform, like, it really isn't rocket science. It's the exercise, the meditation, the diet, the nutrition, and the sleep.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was going to say, actually, I just finished reading the book by Professor Matthew Walker, Why We Sleep. Mm-hmm. And just utterly mind-blowing how sleep deprived as a world we are, and how simple it is, right, to fix, and the effect that has. So I'm definitely not in favor of all the sort of what I would call the hustle warriors up at 5 o'clock every morning and sort of just surviving on 5 hours sleep a night. It doesn't work, right? So
Nope. We did a challenge with your fellow countryman, Nick Littlehales, where he walked everyone through, sleep. He's the sports sleep coach, and he helped everyone kind of assess their sleep. And it was amazing. Even people who've been listening to the podcast for years and have heard all the interviews about sleep, like how bad they actually were sleeping and how much work there was to be done.
Absolutely. It's funny, actually, having just flown back from the States, we used melatonin for the first time. And I have to say, I've never done that before, but actually, you know what, I only got back yesterday. And last night, a good 8 hours, and, out for everyone in the family. And, everyone's up and at it, and as though we hadn't been on a plane at all. So.
Fantastic. Yeah, the melatonin, and I also like to use, which you're reminding me I need to charge them for going to the States next week, but we use the little human charger devices, which are anti-jet lag lights that you put in your ears to reset your circadian rhythm.
Oh, I've not heard of that.
Oh, they're good fun. They're really good fun, which is a good segue into the next question of what are some products or services that you could simply not live without?
What are the products or services I could not? I thought about this question before, and I struggled with this one a little bit because I'm not sure there's many things on there. Initially I'd sort of come up with my phone just generally, but actually the best time I ever had was out in the middle of the ocean where I was completely disconnected. And that was actually a pretty good thing. So yeah, I struggle to answer that. There's some things that I think I could pretty much live without anything. I could sort of be quite happy on a desert island, just chilling out and just. So not much, to be honest.
That is definitely fair. I expected you to be like a satellite phone, but I suppose no, you go to the middle of the Pacific to get away from all that.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe a fishing rod or something like that. That'd be quite cool.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a really good one. Now, talk to me about books, though, because I imagine, gosh, you must have done a hell of a lot of reading in 2 years on a boat.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? I had so many books loaded up on my Kindle and books on the boat. I think I read 2 books the whole time we were away, because you think you're going to have loads of time there to read, but you don't. But having said that, I am an avid reader. So I read a lot before, and I read a lot now. Probably my favorite books, I think, Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. A really sort of key one in my world. And absolutely loving Principles by Ray Dalio at the moment, which is, there's so much stuff in there that I agree with. The whole thing about, finding the joy of the truth rather than the joy of being right. And that man has got so much wisdom. He shares it so well. So those are probably 2 of my favorite books right now. So
really good. I heard Ray speak in Los Angeles not too long ago, and I was like, wow, this guy has thought very deeply about building an organization.
Yeah, he really has. And what I love is his humility in sharing the stuff that he's learned, and his generosity, because he literally doesn't hold anything back. That's the impression that I get from it. So,
definitely. Now, on this show, Caspar, we love to assign homework. This is a harder episode to give people homework for, but I have a feeling because you've done so much public speaking and so much disrupting, you have an assignment that people could do, whether it's a conversation or a writing, journaling experiment. What's some homework that we could give people before next week's episode?
So here's the thing that I would do. I would switch off every device that you've got, sit down with pen and paper. It's my favorite tool. Actually, by the way, that's the thing I couldn't live without is pen and paper, because I love just writing. Just ask yourself the question, what's really important to you in life? And then just keep asking and just keep writing stuff down, and stuff will come out that may surprise you, may fascinate you. And then to do that with your partner as well, if you have one, or people who you're closest to in life, and just really listen to yourself and to other people, because that's where all the juice is. That's where all the answers are. So that's the homework I would set for someone. Really,
really good. Do it. And I also have gone pen and paper, although I use a Rocket Book, which I really like, an erasable notebook. So it's not so heavy, and I can kind of scan it to the internet if I want to. But yeah, pen and paper, if you need to actually do some thinking, it's not on the computer, period, is what I've learned.
Too many distractions on a computer, right? So it's whereas pen and paper, it's just that. So
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I feel so sorry for the generation that didn't spend years and years and years sitting and writing out notes in a classroom, because you don't have that connection and that skill that your best thinking comes when you move your hands.
Absolutely. Well, it's funny. So in the business before, we were selling B2B companies, and I always get my team, rather than typing letters, to handwrite letters to send to our prospects and our clients, because people read more readily, right? Because people don't do that anymore. And there's something very special about handwritten letter. So, it's a practice which is, reducing, but I think it's incredibly important. So Definitely.
Now, let me also ask you, How do you approach learning? Tell me a little bit about that, because you've now changed industries so many times. Tell me a little bit about how you approach a new learning challenge.
Yeah, so I guess my first thing is to try and find out who are the real experts in any field, because any field there's always a whole bunch of noise. So it's drilling back, and it's like, who's the person who's really the expert behind all of this? And then once I've found them, go and pay the money, go and spend time with that person, and go and hang out in their company and learn. I learn by talking. I've got lots of books, and that's good for to start stuff off. But if I want to get deep immersion, I have to go and spend time and just be around the energy and the ideas and just get full on immersion. So live events are always best for me, just to go and be there and be present, and just discussing stuff with other people. So that's my favorite route.
Really good. I like that. And people would think that I am completely autodidactic as a learner. They would be surprised that I do the same thing. I like to write a big check and fly across the world and go to seminars and learn in the room, because the stakes are higher, the accountability is higher, and it covers all the boxes that we talk about in our super learner programs, right? It's experiential. Yeah. You're changing your brain chemistry when you're changing your location, and you're in that heightened sense of awareness. And you have opportunity, right, to engage and make decisions and ask questions. And it really makes a big difference.
It does. I mean, just that whole energy vibration of just sort of being around other people playing at a high level, you cannot help but be influenced and lifted up by it. So we ran a 3-day event in London at the beginning of last week. And, the vibe and the buzz that you get out of a room like that with smart people, I mean, it's just so much more than the learning itself. It's that whole experience which anchors it in your brain. I mean, you know far more about this than I do from your advanced learning, but that's what I find. So
I completely agree. Now, that actually raises another question, which I neglected to ask. I mean, tell me, you wrote a book. Tell me what you're working on now. I mean, you're teaching seminars, you're speaking. How are you spreading this message of disrupting your life?
Yes, so I do a lot of corporate keynotes, although I have to say that's less about disrupting your life. That's more about teamwork and leadership, and how do you build super teams. But then the disruption message. So with my wife, we run this mission called The Brave You. And that's this whole thing, thrive at home, thrive at work. So we have some digital products which we're just launching. And we run events and workshops and retreats. So basically that's the path we're going down. So
I love it. I really love it. I think your message is so important, because the world has changed and many people have not realized it. It's kind of happened while they were sleeping, or while they were droning away at a 4-year university degree, and they have much more freedom than they realize. I think it's freedom that isn't exercised is even worse than not having the freedom. It's like a caged bird staying in a cage once the door has been opened. It's really sad.
Yeah, I love the analogy. I mean, that's so true. And the thing that traps us, right, that cage is the perception of the culture around us. I mean, I remember some friends saying to us, you're incredibly brave, read for that, you're crazy, when we said we're going to go and do this. And all these things was like, well, what happened to your career? And what will happen to this? What happened to this? And it's like, well, it'll be fine. Let's just go and do this stuff. Because the whole thing was, once you've got kids, is people say, well, you can go and travel again once they've left home. And it's like, well, why? Who set that rule? So, yeah, it's just challenging everything and just sort of saying, well, why can't I go and do this?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And people can learn all about that in your book. Tell me a bit about the book, what it covers.
Yeah, so the book is called Where the Magic Happens, on Amazon and all good bookstores. And basically, it's a book of 2 parts. So the first part is the whole sort of life disruption part. So everything that we did to change our world, and then we've left in there or put in there a blueprint as well. So if anyone else wants to follow the pattern as well, follow what we did, but create your own ventures, then it's literally each of those different steps, creating the story, creating the values. How do you work together as a team? That's the first bit. And then the second part is our adventures around the world. So all the highs and the lows and the challenges and all those sorts of things. So that's basically what the book is. It's meant to be a practical guide for anyone who wants to disrupt their own life.
Really, really cool. And John D. Martini said, this book needs to be made into a film, which I think would be such a cool film. It would be like Castaway meets Euro Trip meets I don't know what else.
It'd be fun, right? So I did a radio interview last year, and someone said, who do you want to play you in the film? And I said, I don't know about that, but my wife would quite like Colin Firth to be me, and I think she'd quite like to be in the film if it was Colin Firth.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I imagine that Hugh Grant could play you. People will have to look at the blog post to see there's some similarity there. You could go, Hugh Grant could definitely play you. Well, Caspar, where can people reach out and learn more about everything that you're doing? I'm going to check out your stuff as well. I've been holding off on reading the book, so I'm excited I finally get to.
Awesome. Well, the first place is my website, CasparCraven.com, CASPAR, Craven, CRAVEN.com. And then the same at LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the usual platforms I'm there. So, and YouTube as well. So.
Very, very cool. And before I let you go, Caspar, one last question I want to ask, which is, if people take away one big message from this episode and they carry that message with them for the rest of their lives, what would you hope for that to be?
My message would be this, that it's encouraging everyone to deliberately, specifically, and consciously design their lives to work out exactly what you want to have in your life, know why, and then go and make it happen. Don't let life happen to you by accident.
That is the best possible message and beautifully summarizes everything we're trying to do here at the podcast. So I really, really appreciate it. I always appreciate chatting with you and masterminding with you, and it's always an inspiration. So thank you very, very much for coming on the show.
It's been awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you for the great, insightful questions. Had some questions there where I rarely get asked. That's really nice. So thank you. Love it.
Awesome. Pleasure was all mine, my friend. Let's talk soon.
All right. Thanks, Jonathan.
All right, super friends, that is all we have for you today, but I hope you guys really enjoyed the show, and I hope you learned a ton of actionable information, tips, advice that will help you go out there and overcome the impossible. If you've enjoyed the show, please take a moment to leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher, or drop us a quick little note on the Twitter machine at GoSuperhuman. Also, if you have any ideas for anyone out there who you would love to see on the show, we always love to hear your recommendations. You can submit on our website, or you can just drop us an email and let us know. That's all for today, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in to the Becoming Superhuman podcast. For more great skills and strategies, or for links to any of the resources mentioned in this episode, visit www.becomingasuperhuman.com/podcast. We'll see you next time.